the outside looking in, Kouri and Eric Richins seemed like an idyllic Utah couple. Eric owned a successful masonry company, while Kouri had her own real estate business, and the couple had 3 young sons together. But all was not as well as it seemed on the outside. Kouri had secretly been taking out large, fraudulent loans and was stealing money from Eric's business and charging tens of thousands of dollars on his credit cards. She also took out secret life insurance policies on Eric totaling to $1.5 million. Now, I should note here that these are all things that are being claimed in a lawsuit filed against Kouri on behalf of Eric's estate, and the case hasn't gone to trial yet, but there's a certain enough amount of proof at this point that she was in fact doing all of these things behind her husband's back. And Eric wasn't totally in the dark about his wife's antics. Eric had consulted with a divorce lawyer in 2020. He had changed his will to not name Kouri at all and instead left his estate under the control of his sister. He also believed Kouri had tried to poison him several times before, and he even warned his family that if anything happened to him, Kouri was to blame. In February of 2022, Kouri left a sandwich along with a love note in Eric's car for him. And after Eric ate the sandwich, he broke out into hives and even had to use one of his son's EpiPens in order to revive himself. This was the event that made him start to worry that Kouri was indeed trying to poison him. Later on in February, Kouri contacted an acquaintance looking for hard drugs. She asked for, quote, some Michael Jackson stuff, because Kouri didn't really know shit about drugs or that Michael Jackson had actually died from propofol, which isn't easily found on a street level. So this dealer that Kouri hit up ended up giving her fentanyl pills because those things are everywhere these days. Kouri owed a ton of money at this time. She owed Eric over $500,000. She owed the IRS almost $200,000, and she owed a lender nearly $2 million. And it seems what she did to her husband, as well as the events following, were all financially motivated. On March 4th, 2022, Kouri made Eric a Moscow Mule, which is typically just supposed to be an alcoholic drink, and this drink was to celebrate Kouri's new business deal. Hours later, paramedics were called to the home after Kouri found Eric unresponsive. He had 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, which the medical examiner believed had been taken orally. Kouri is, of course, immediately playing off Eric's death like he must have either secretly had a drug problem or taken his own life. But it was obvious to everyone who knew Eric that he had never been one to use illicit substances like that, nor did he seem to have any desire to want to hurt himself. And to Eric's family, it seemed like something more had to be going on. But Kouri was not initially a suspect, despite all of her sketchy activity. Just days after Eric died, Kouri got a locksmith to drill into Eric's safe, which contained roughly $150,000 in cash. So Eric's sister, who is now in charge of his estate, told Kouri to leave the safe alone, and that's when Kouri got angry and punched her sister-in-law in the face. The police were called and informed Kouri that Eric had a living trust and she was not over it. A year after Eric's death, in March of 2023, Kouri published a book titled Are You With Me? And dedicated this book to Eric, who she described as my amazing husband and wonderful father. The book was intended to help children who were overcoming the grief of a loved one. And this book actually became very popular and also put a lot more attention on Eric's untimely death. Kouri went on a local news station in Salt Lake City in April 2023 to discuss the book and her husband's death. She said his death was unexpected and it took her family by shock. So she wrote this book with her kids to navigate the grieving process and help other kids who have lost a loved one. Kouri is the worst kind of person, and her kids are going to be so messed up after this. They were obviously already traumatized over the death of their father, and now their mother is using their grief to write a book as though she's some sort of hero championing grief counseling for children, when in reality, the whole reason her kids are experiencing this loss is because she murdered their father. And then she tried to profit off of his death and the grief that she caused her own children. By May of this year, detectives finally had enough hard evidence to charge Kouri with aggravated murder and 3 counts of possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. And as I'm sure most of us in the true crime community have learned by now, the Google searches are always the most damning evidence. One of the Google searches that Kouri made was, "What is a lethal dose of fentanyl?" They always get caught with the Google searches, and I feel like it's something that you really shouldn't even need to Google. It's either like common sense or something that wouldn't even be on Google. But not much is your answer to that, Kouri. Not much. For those of you who may not know, fentanyl is basically like super heroin. It's a very powerful synthetic opioid, and it only takes a very small amount. We're talking like micrograms to be fatal, especially for someone like Eric who had no tolerance to opiates. Kouri was also denied bond because of all the evidence against her. The judge was worried that she may try to harm herself, others, or possibly be a flight risk. But we will see more as this case goes to trial.